Hello, this is ASEAN Movie Pulse Talks number 2. I am Panos Kotzathanasis, and I'm here with Rouven Linnarz, co-administrator of ASEAN Movie Pulse. Today we are going to do a different thing than the previous time. We're going to speak about one of the filmmakers who we are kind of obsessed with here in ASEAN Movie Pulse, at least some of us. And this is no other than Takashi Miike. We're going to speak about 4 of his movies, not the most well-known ones, but Blues Harp, Linnarz, Visitor Q, and Izo. Rouven, let me start with a personal question, because before we go to the movies, why do you like Miike?
Well, first of all, since probably many of you have read my reviews but never actually seen me, my name is Rouven Linnarz. As Panos said, I'm one of the admins for AMP, Asian Movie Pulse. And to come to your question, actually, Takeshi Kitano and Takashi Miike and and Toyoda were the reason why I joined, or why I started writing about Asian movies in general. In the late 90s and the early 2000s, there was one TV channel in Germany who, after midnight, showed Asian movies. And one of the first things I caught there was a movie that I didn't really understand, which was really different to what I've seen before, and had a very music video aesthetic. And this was Dead or Alive, the first one. You remember the beginning of Dead or Alive, when there are the 2 actors, Sho Aikawa and Riki Takoichi, saying 1, 2, 3, like the beginning of a rock song, and then the whole thing begins, and it's so much rock and roll, and this had so much energy, then I couldn't take my eyes off it. And next week and the week after that, they showed they broadcast Audition, and the week after they did, I'm not sure which one it was. I think it was the second Dead or Alive. But after this initial shock, I sort of got hooked with Miike and tried to search for as many films that I can find. And as you probably know, there are many films you can find with this one.
Indeed.
What about you? Why did you become interested in Miike?
Yeah, it was okay. I have to say, actually, this is not scripted. We actually just agree. I also came into Japanese cinema particularly through those 3 filmmakers you also mentioned, Miike, Kitano, and Toyoda, and maybe and also Tsukamoto. Particularly because their cinema it was, when I first saw Audition back in the 90s, I felt that this is cinema like I have never seen before. This is something truly different, particularly in the way Miike implements violence in his films in order to make social comments. I felt that was unique, and it's like another kind of horror movie where the combination of exploitation and horror actually becomes something beautiful artistically and also meaningful socially. That is why I really love Miike, and I continue to enjoy his films until now. Even if, okay, let me say that we actually have a project here in ASEAN Movie Pulse. We are trying to review all of the films that Takashi Miike has shot. It's 105, if I remember correctly now. We are
at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, at 101. Okay, given with so many movies, there are a lot of bad movies there, but I think that his great movies actually can make you forget everything bad that he has shot.
And I think with the project that you mentioned, it gave me personally, I'm not sure about the other writers, but I think I speak for many of them. It gave us a opportunity to actually discover a cinema beyond the cinema that you know, because many people know Audition, even people who are not that into Asian movies like we are. They know Audition, they know Dead or Alive, and most of them obviously for its notoriety know Ishii the Killer. But many people don't. When I say he has also done a film that deals with romance, that deals with family drama, that deals with comedy, they don't know. For example, the first movie that we talk about, Blues Harp, many people actually don't know this film exists, which is, by the way, a shame. Um, Maybe if somebody of Arrow listens, this should be a Blu-ray release.
Yes, yeah,
Definitely, because the DVD I think is out of print. At least it was when I looked at it this morning.
yeah, yeah. We are actually, I think we are waiting for like a package at some moment that will have not everything, maybe like 50 movies of Mickey. That would be interesting, but I guess we have to wait, considering a lot of his movies are very difficult to find and were actually very low budget, straight to video productions that I don't know if they can be transferred actually to anything higher
Yeah,
definition.
that's true. But I think that's the way they're supposed to be viewed. I can't think of a filmmaker that is linked to a certain kind of aesthetic, if you know what I mean. For example, you when you watch Graveyard of Honor, we're not going to discuss Graveyard of Honor, but or ley lines, for example, it has a certain aesthetic, a washed out aesthetic, a somewhat amateurish look, which I think fits perfectly to to the kind of story that he's telling, to this as I said, this dynamic approach, this young approach, sometimes this how should I put this, in the moment approach that I really like about his cinema.
Yeah, I think it is obvious that one of his best traits is that the way he has managed to implement low budget in his films. I don't think there are many filmmakers who can do so much with so small budgets. I think that is one of his best traits.
All right, since I just teased the audience, shall I say something about Blues Harp?
Please do, Rouven. What is
All right,
Blues Harp about?
this is I actually told Panos that I took some notes, which is good for Takashi Miike because sometimes he tells quite convoluted stories. So if I look beside the camera, that's not because I'm ignoring Panos or the audience. That's because I'm looking at my notes. It deals with Blues Harp is set in a very remote town. If I think it's the outskirts of Tokyo, if I'm not mistaken,
I think
and
so.
it deals with two men. The first one is Kenji, a yakuza played by, I hope I'm pronouncing all of these names correctly, probably not, Seiichi Tanabe, and a bartender slash drug dealer called Chuji, played by Hiroyuki Ikoichi. And these two men actually meet by chance. Kenji is fleeing from a mob of yakuza thugs who are trying to kill him, from a opposing yakuza faction that is. He's trying to hide, severely wounded, and Chuji sees him and hides him, takes him home, and with the help of another girl who's working at the bar where he works, he takes care of his wounds. And Kenji's plan is to eventually take over the gang. And that's where the two men actually have something in common. They both try to escape the streets, as they call it, or escape the situation that they're in. And I think, without giving too much away, that's basically as simple as you can get with this plot. And it deals very much with something that we come across very often with Takashi Miike, the theme of the outcast or the outsider. Also with repressed sexuality, in this case homosexuality. There is a lot of homosexual tension between Kenji and Chuji. Kenji is actually homosexual, but because he's a yakuza, can't really be honest about his sexuality. He's actually having an affair with I think it is the boss's wife, I think.
Yeah.
He's having an affair with her, and there is this really funny scene where he's trying to be just like we are during the pandemic. He's trying to be as clean as possible after a sexual encounter with her. He's cleaning himself very he's cleaning himself after he has had sex with a female. Yeah, these are the themes that he's dealing with, among other things.
Okay, as you mentioned, Takashi Miike's cinema was always focused on the misfits of society, let's say. But I feel this is one of the films that this aspect has one of its highlights, particularly because the two protagonists, Tsuji is biracial Japanese and a drug dealer, and Kenji is a homosexual yakuza. So even from the get-go, you have a unique kind of story here. What do you think?
And to make matters worse, Shuji is part Japanese, part African American, and he's the son of a American soldier, which I think labels him even more of an outcast. And I think we have to talk about why this film is called Blues Harp, because Blues Harp is, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not a professional musician, but it's a piece of music. And Shuji is playing the harmonica whenever he is having a moment of his own, whenever he's taking a break, he plays the harmonica very beautifully. And he is actually discovered later on in the film by a band leader played by Atsushi Okuno, who also did, by the way, the score for this film. And he has a chance of escaping his current position, his current state of affairs by being a member of a band. But this obviously doesn't work out. And to me, I'm not sure about you, Panos, but Blues Harp, the entire film feels very much like a piece of music, like a piece of blues or jazz music, very melancholic, very romantic, and to be honest, quite beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's one of the films of Miike's films where music has like a protagonist role, we can say. Okay, the title obviously suggests that, but also it becomes obvious as you watch the movie. The music is implemented in the narrative quite significantly, let's say. However, this is okay. Miike, to the people who most of the people who know Miike know him about considering him a violent director, but this is not exactly one of those films. There is violence, but it's implemented in the narrative in order to progress it. It's not like in order to shock or something else. So what do you think about the way violence is portrayed in the film?
I think violence, violence comes, it's a general statement now, comes in many forms. To me, repression is a form of violence. There are two kinds of violence going on, even in a extreme, let's say, cinema like Ichi the Killer. Because there's one thing which is the outward violence which we can see on the screen, but there is also the violence that comes with a repression or bullying, because we're talking about characters who have been, because of their background, like Chuji with the African American background, or Kenji because of his sexuality, have been bullied or have been the target of, some sort of banter within the Yakuza ranks. I think when we talk about Miike, we talk about a director who deals with violence in many forms, and I kind of like the way he does it in this film. It's a very, as you say, it's a toned down violence, the outer violence, but it's nevertheless a violent film because it deals with repression and what it does to you. It tells you how society labels you an outcast, and how you, like in a self-fulfilling prophecy, accept this sort of fate. And like the characters later on in Ley Lines, you are basically in a dead end situation, in a situation where you can't get out, and where you have come to accept this sort of behavior, even though you are trying to find ways of escaping it. It's very, very interesting how he portrays protagonists who, not just in Blues Harp, but all the time, who try to find ways of escaping, but because of this acceptance, they don't,
Yeah, yeah.
because they don't show up or have self-destructive impulses or something like that. What do you
Yeah,
think about that?
yeah. I think that the fact that his protagonists, more times than not, they fail in what they want to do, even if their purposes are not particularly grand. They just want to be part of something bigger or perceived as normal or something like that. But they usually fail, and I think that's a very interesting thing in Miike's filmography. His films are like, there's no happy ending most of the time, let's say. And I feel in this particular case, in Blues Harp, the melancholy that permeates the narrative actually comes from this concept that it is obvious that this is a film that the, the heroes will not, it's obvious that it's not going to be a happy ending. That's the sense that actually starts from the beginning and never leaves the films. That's what I get. That is why it's so melancholic and dramatic.
Perhaps to those who feel like Panos is spoiling everything for you, this
Well,
is
it's,
very much clear from the very first image. This
yeah.
melancholic image, you get this feeling, but also by the way of framing the image, you get this feeling that this is a dead end situation that these people can't get out of.
Yes. Okay. Considering this is a 1998 film, I think we can do some spoilers. We will see. We will see. It's okay. It's okay. All right. All right. You want to? Okay. Let's go to the next one now.
Yes, and ley lines,
Ley lines.
right? Or ley lines.
I'm
Ley
not sure.
lines.
Actually, I'm not. I like ley
Let's
lines.
say ley
So
lines.
let's say ley
Or,
lines. Okay.
the YouTube comment section will correct us.
Of course.
All right, Ley Lines 1999, the third and final part of the so-called Black Society trilogy, which started with Shinjuku Triad Society, if I'm not mistaken, and was continued with
Rainy Dog.
Rainy Dog, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. And again, it's a not as convoluted plot as with the last one. It's actual, but it deals with many of the same topics. It deals with a character named Ryoichi, played by Kazuki Kiyamura, who is who lives in a very small town, and like the character of Chuji in Blues Harp, he has a mixed background. He has a Japanese Chinese background, if I'm not mistaken, and has been, much like Chuji, has been the target of much bullying in his past life. And he's now a young adult trying to get work, but he's unsuccessful, and feels like the only chance of, well, being someone or trying to become someone is going to the big city, which in this case is the capital of Japan, Tokyo. And all of his friends, apart from one, played by Tomorowo Taguchi, they join. He's the only one joining him. The other one they bail out in the last minute, and much to his surprise, the only one who joins in, making the trio perfect, is his brother Shunrai. Michizuke Kashiwaya is the one who plays that, who is very, very unlike his brother, a very good student. At least he gives off the impression, because he's always studying. And these three they go to Tokyo trying to make it, but Tokyo is a cesspit of its own. They're trying to get into contact with a local drug dealer. I think it is a drug dealer played by the name of Wong, also a Chinese-Japanese character played by Naoto Takenaka. And they make the acquaintance of a prostitute named Anita, played by Dan Lee, also with Chinese-Japanese background. And so you have a band of outsiders trying to make it in Tokyo, but failing completely to do so. And the only other option Ryoichi sees is to actually leave the country altogether, trying to make it in Brazil. That's his aim for the trio.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about Ley Lines? I think you reviewed it actually for AMP, right?
Uh, did I? I think no, I
I could be
didn't.
mistaken, but I think you
I
did. But I could be mistaken.
no, it was Matt Cooper, if I remember correctly. I reviewed it for Eastern Kicks like some years ago.
Right.
Okay, all right. This year, okay, I'm gonna talk about violence again. This time, this film is. I think it's more violent than Blues Harp, and also this time sex is a more central factor. There are a number of sex scenes, and but they are not exactly erotic. They are mostly, let's say, they follow exploitation lines in a completely other setting than what we saw in the previous film, Blues Harp. This is a completely different film, in my opinion. But regarding the violence, Miike places his characters in a world filled with drugs, criminals, whores, pimps, and it actually, in this setting, makes it inevitable for the four friends to, at some point, resort to violence themselves. This is they use violence in their effort to get out, to go to Brazil, as you say. Again, their effort seems hopeless. Let's not spoil what happens in the end, but the sense of hopelessness is again here. It's quite obvious. What do you think? Do you think they are hopeless as they are portrayed in the film?
I think society wants them to be hopeless because society labels them as hopeless cases. I think the one of the most violent things I've seen is actually has nothing to do with sex, has nothing to do with the out violence. It's very much at the beginning when Ryoichi is trying to apply for a job at the job center, I think, and this is shot from a POV. So we see the world through his eyes, and one of the members says, "Well, if you would apply to Japanese rules, if you were Japanese, you would understand." And this is followed by a violent outburst of this character. And all right, and this to me sums up very. This to me is one of the most violent things because it involves the viewer. In this case, you actually not just seeing the bullying from an outside perspective, you're actually part of it. You get to feel or to experience what it is to be rejected, not just by one person, but a person who stands for the society you're trying to fit in. And I think, besides being a violent film, as you mentioned, besides the topic of violence, we have to talk about the relevance of Tokyo in the films of Takashi Miike, because this is very much like in many other films, for example, in Ichi the Killer or in Audition, perhaps. What kind of role does Tokyo play in the films of Takashi Miike? Is Tokyo really a place that has this violence, this repressed sex, this anger? Because it pretty much seems like it, at least through the eyes of Miike, don't you think?
Yeah. I think the part of Tokyo Miike portrays in his films are it's the places in Tokyo that actually these things happen. Like there are places where Yakuza dominates people. There are kind of slums, let's say, and but this is the setting Miike always has. Like in most of his films, you won't see the rich parts of Tokyo. I don't remember any movie of his that deals with the rich. I'm not sure if you.
Audition.
I don't think so. You remember any film that deals with
Yeah,
the
Audition, definitely.
audition? Yeah.
But
Audition.
this is a
Yeah.
but the rich never are never in Tokyo. They're outside of Tokyo. I mean, the guy in who plays the rich businessman, he lives somewhere outside. I think he lives on the coast somewhere, so he doesn't live in Tokyo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, but yes, I think that his heroes, Takashi Miike's heroes, always are situated in the poor parts, where the one where the misfits of society are, which is always his central concept, where the poor, the criminals. This is where his stories thrive, I think. Okay, I think about the film, I have some issues with it. To tell you the truth, I don't like the acting at all. I think it's one of the most, maybe not the most, but I think it's poorly acted. But with the exception of Naoto Takenaka, who plays Wong, which I feel this is a great villain. It's like an archetypical Miike villain because he's violent, ruthless, perverse. This is how Miike usually portrays his villains. What did you think about him, about Wong?
I think it's all these characters always they try to find a way to reconnect with their heritage, with their Chinese heritage, which is also in a way a sign of liberation. And with him, I find interesting what kind of way he has found, because he actually employs people, mostly prostitutes, who sing him songs. They never have sex with him, at least I didn't see it in the film, who sing him songs, Chinese songs, or tell him Chinese folk tales or kind of stories. I think at one point he even employs Anita to tell him a story that she has heard from her mother, and this is where he gets off in more than one way. And I think this is a interesting way of this sort of dealing with his heritage. On the one hand side, he doesn't want he keeps it a secret. He's employing people to establish this connection, at least for a couple of minutes. And this, to me, doesn't necessarily make him as sinister as many of the other villains that we see him, but he is this obsessive character and this deeply disturbed character. Yeah.
But you like the acting, though.
I was just talking about. That's a good question. I mean, I just saw it this morning. I didn't find any issues with the acting. The only thing I noted down was that the actor playing Shunrai, his brother, he's basically the same. He's basically playing the same character as he did in Dead or Alive. He's he even, if I'm not mistaken, I have to double check, but I think he's even wearing the same outfit.
Okay. And how's the
And
experience of? Sorry.
and it's very, very. I didn't find it particularly great, the acting. I wouldn't take any issues with it, but I would not write a review saying, "Oh, these were great performances" or something like that. But I like the themes and the that he's talking about in the film.
How was the experience of watching Miike in the morning?
I don't mind watching Miike. I watched Ichi the Killer in the morning, so that's fine.
Okay.
By the way, this Ley Lines has one of the most beautiful opening shots that I've ever seen in a Miike film. When you see the couple of children, they are singing a song, sort of sing song, sing sang, something like this, a rhyme. It's a very beautiful scene, very beautiful colors, like the sun is set like sunset or something like that. And then they meet these other kids, and they are calling them shinks or half breeds or something like this. And suddenly this whole atmosphere turns. It's not innocent anymore. It has this violent undertone to it. I think that's an amazing opening scene.
I think the same applies to the ending. Like, I think that the initial and the ending scenes are probably the most beautiful in the film. Okay, the cinematography in general is pretty good. It's Naosuke Maizumi, and I think it's one of the most beautifully shot Miike films, at least from the first part of his career, at least. Okay, since we talked too much about this one. I don't think we have time for the fourth, but let's go to the third one. Let's go to Visitor Q.
Oh.
I have to say this is one of my favorite Miike films.
Oh yes, me too.
So
I
what is
like this
about,
one.
Rouven?
Such a sick film, if I might say so. By the way, 2001, when the film would come out, was one of the most prolific years, I think, in Miike's career. Agitator, Family, Happiness of the Katakuris, and Ichi the Killer came out all in the same year. And it deals with a rather peculiar individual, a TV reporter. I think he is a TV reporter, played by the name of Kiyoshi. And he has, and because he can't come up with any new ideas, he has said, well, why come up with anything new? Just make my family the target of my footage, and he has made it an obsession with filming his family, which actually give him quite enough to film, because his family is a plethora of various kinds of depravity, you could say, from bullying to prostitution. The film begins with Kiyoshi trying to have sex with his daughter, who is a prostitute, but he is unable to do it. He can't get it up, as Miike tells him, calling him an early bird. And his son Takuya is he's bullied at school and is a tyrant a dictator, so to speak, at home, beating his mother whenever the occasion fits. Doesn't meet when, let's say, the room is too cold for him, he beats his mother up, saying, "Why didn't you turn on the heater?" When his food gets cold, he beats her. Doesn't matter. And his mother also is a prostitute, goes by the name of Kaiko, and this is the outlet. This is the family that we meet. We can't say it's a family on the verge of disintegration. This is a disintegrated family at the very beginning. And at one point, Kiyoshi gets a wake-up call. Well, not a wake-up call. He gets a stone on the top of his head, thrown or smashed by by a visitor Q. He's called Visitor Q or Q by various outlets, so I'm just going to call him Q. And because he is so happy of being hit on the head, I'm not sure why, he invites this visitor Q to his home, where he is beginning his mission of, well, saving the family, starting with the mother.
Okay. There are various unique elements in this film. To begin with, it's after Q appears in the movie, the whole thing is set up as, let's say, a reality show, which someone is shooting a reality show, let's say something like that, but it's completely extreme, right? This is when I was watching the film, I was thinking, like, this is an experiment on what would happen if Takashi Miike ever decided to shoot a sitcom or something like that. And okay, but the film is very extreme. Like, they have incest, murder, necrophilia. I mean, almost every kind of perversion in the book is in the film. But at the same time, Miike manages to make a number of comments for the Japanese family, Japanese inside the parentheses, because what becomes obvious as you see the film is how bankrupt this family is, as you also mentioned. But yeah. Okay, and Q is actually the catalyst to show every member of the family how bankrupt they are. So yeah, what do you think of the role of Q? What is the role of Q in this narrative?
I think he is very much like a seducer. He reminded me very much of Terence Stamp in Pier Paolo Pasolini's Teorema. He is an outside force who doesn't have a name, and he doesn't need a name, and who does something and who makes people realize something. And beginning with the mother, because what he is basically doing is giving a wake-up call to this family, who is not just bankrupt, who is emotionally numb. I mean, the fact that a father can manages to, let's say, view all of this depravity, all of this violence, is he's only able to do that through the lens of the camera. That's how he that's how he does it. And the visitor gives him, and not just him, but all the rest of the family, a very violent wake up call, saying, you have to feel something, even if it's just me hitting you on the head. You have to feel something. You have to be there in the moment. This is your this is your family, God damn it. Deal with it and try to be, and try to come back to life. And what he does is he doesn't just awaken any feeling, he awakens the feeling of love. By the way, this was actually uh, the reason why he had to do that. He was under obligation by Cinerocket, a company, asking him to do a feature dealing with pure love, and he delivered. He made a he made no. He made something about pure love. It's extreme, even though nowadays, if you watch, I'm not sure about Greece, about reality TV shows in Greece, but if you watch reality TV nowadays, I mean, it's very, very extreme. I mean, this could be shot by Takashi Miike, even though Takashi Miike would never be this boring as the reality TV, maybe.
Mhm. And I also think inside this extremity of the film, of the script, he also managed to speak like for a number of issues that modern Japanese society has to face. Okay, these are it's not just Japanese, but okay, I'm saying it for the purpose of the movie. Uh, okay, he deals with bullying, the way the son is treated, and the way bullying shapes people into becoming bullies themselves. I think this is a notion that's presented quite eloquently in the film. Also, the father is a very interesting persona because, okay, maybe this is again a global concept, but I feel that Japanese people, particularly and particularly men, identify themselves through their work, maybe more than people in other countries. So for the father to lose his job has actually shattered him, make him like a man who doesn't know what to do and is able to do anything. The scene you described with his daughter portrays actually this thing exactly. But also, okay, he makes the social comment, but again, I feel that what he portrays is that there is no hope for this family. Again, I think his message is a very pessimistic one. Like, okay, let's say Q eventually helps the family, but what he says through Q is that families cannot help themselves in essence. If they are to be saved, it would happen through an external force. I think that is what Q signifies. What do you think? Is there
I have to
future
dis-
for the Japanese family?
I have to disagree with you here.
Please.
Maybe this is spoiler warning, by the way, for those who haven't seen the film. Go watch it. You will not regret it. I think even though you are right that they need an external force to actually deal with the problem that they are facing, much like a marriage counselor trying to help a couple in with their problems. But eventually, the family members themselves as individuals and them as a unit find ways to deal with the problems. Um, I mean, I have never, I, this, I'm not sure if anybody can understand it, but for example, the act of, let's say, sleeping with a woman's corpse is in this case a act of liberation. This is the first time we see this person alive, and he does that by himself, no help from the visitor, and then he disappears into nowhere to be seen, probably helping another family maybe. And this is the point where the family is actually standing on its own 2 feet. This is, in my opinion, the not just a feature dealing with love, but this is actually the one of the only, I'm not sure if there's another one, maybe Ichi the Killer. This is possibly the only hopeful feature that he's done,
The
in my
only,
opinion.
sorry, I
But
did. The only feature I
he,
did.
The only hopeful feature that he has
You
done.
think it's hopeful?
Oh yes, I
Okay.
would even go so far as to call it romantic.
Romantic. Well, yeah. Okay. I guess there is a certain romantic. Where do you see the romantic element in the film? You mean romanticized? Let's say, like, not there is romance, but
Romantic in the way that the way he portrays love. I mean, it's a different kind of love. It's not the same love that we see, for example, in Ichi the Killer, where it's about the typical romantic love that, and the hero tries to find a way to reciprocate that love. In this case, it's a nutritious motherly love. For example, the first thing that he is trying to teach the mother is being this mother again, supporting the family, supporting her husband, and trying to be as nutritious as possible. And by nutritious, I mean he's actually trying to make her lactate again. And this image of the children drinking the mother milk again from the mother's breast, I think that's a romantic image. It's an extreme image in that context, specifically when you add the reality TV aesthetic to it. But this is a romantic image to me.
I have to agree with that, and also this is one of the best samples to show that if you go beyond the violence or the extremity of the images in Miike's films, you will see all those social comments that we just discussed. I mean, violence is just the package, but underneath that, there is much substance. It becomes obvious if you think a bit more about his movies. I think that's a trait of his. Okay, I guess we talk a bit more, so we will have a part two, Rouven, you think?
Oh yes, we will have a part two. I mean, there are over 100 films.
Yeah, and considering we talk about 3 every time, we'll have like 30 parts or something like that, and 40 maybe, who knows?
Something like that, but we don't need to cover all of them.
There are
Please
some that we really don't. Yeah.
Salaryman Kintaro, I'm not going to discuss that again.
Okay.
Just don't bother with that one. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. So this is it. Aslan Movie Pals Talks number 2 from Panos Kotzathanasis and
from Rouven Linnarz.
Thank you very much for watching and see you probably next week. Thank you very much.
See you everyone. Stay healthy.